Good afternoon, everyone. This is the beginning of our Ango training period. And after the talk, we'll have a short Ango entering ceremony in the Zendo. And you come in and this is optional, if, although we encourage everyone who wants to join. And you just come in and ask Shinko and I, who will be in front of the altar, that you would like to join the Ango training period. And you'll be glad to know we've never refused anybody. And then you'll make 3 prostrations and then sign your name on the Ango board, this beautiful board that Roshi Shinko made. This Ango period is a little...
Excuse me one moment, behind the scene.
Oh,
Yeah,
they're doing to the altar.
no.
Okay.
Did you hear everything? Yeah? Did you? A little
Okay.
bit.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about how our practice has changed since it came from Japan to the United States. And it's one of the things we were just discussing is you can just do a standing bow to the altar instead of the 3 prostrations. Our Ango this year is a little different because I'm going to be the Shuso, so that means that I'll give during the Shuso Hosen, or the ceremony at the end of Rohatsu, I'll give a talk and I'll engage all of you in Dharma combat. So invite everybody to participate. It should be a lot of fun. Maizumi Roshi said that you can be Shuso more than once, so this is my 2nd time. The first time I was Shuso was in 1979, so a little over, was that about 26 years ago. So I remember I was very nervous, and then I looked out at everybody there and I said, "These are my friends. Why am I so nervous? They're not going to skewer me." Although they tried. Yeah. Ango means peaceful dwelling. And it originated when in India, and Echo talked a little bit about it last Saturday, that it was during the monsoon season that they couldn't pilgrimage very well, so they gathered together to practice. And it was 90 days. It was in the summer usually, but ours is always in the autumn, starting in September and ending in December. And I'm going to read a little bit about what Dogen wrote about Ango. But first I want to mention that when I came to the Zen Center in Los Angeles, it was 53 years ago. There was a plaque inscribed by my teacher, Maizumi Roshi, hanging in the Zendo. It was actually outside the Zendo. And it read, in part, it said, "Those who wish to realize and actualize the Buddha's way are welcome. Otherwise, you better keep out." Yeah. So you're welcome if you really want to practice, but if you're just there to fool around, not welcome. And then he said, let us be harmonious like milk dissolved in water. Temporarily, there are the relationships of guest to master and juniors to seniors. However, eventually, all of us will be Buddhas forever. We should maintain the Buddha mind moment after moment. Well, since Ango means peaceful dwelling, I thought I would mention this because he talks about harmonious activity of the Sangha. And the whole point of Ango is for us to realize that each of us will be Buddhas forever, and to maintain the Buddha mind moment after moment. This moment after moment is very important. You know? Reminds me of that expression from the Diamond Sutra, where it says the mind of the past is ungraspable, the mind of the future is ungraspable, and the mind of the present is ungraspable. Okay. Now, it's very clear, I think, that the mind of the past is ungraspable because it's already occurred. It's in the past. You can't grab back the past. And the mind of the future is ungraspable because it's already gone. But what about the mind of the present? We say to maintain the present, the mind of the present moment, but the Diamond Sutra says the mind of the present is ungraspable. So we say moment after moment to maintain the Buddha mind. Well, as soon as you say, this is the present, it's no longer the present. It's the past. So is it this moment, or is it this moment, or is it that moment? You try to put your finger on the moment, and there isn't any moment. That's why we say our practice is without beginning and without end. Because as soon as you try to fix it in time or in space, that's not it anymore. You know, there's an expression, it's like trying to nail Jello to a wall. They don't do it anymore, but I think when I was in high school chemistry, we used to have little blobs of mercury that you try to pick up, and they go scooting all over the place when you try to pick them up. I think they realize that it's toxic and they stop doing it. But it sure was fun. You know? So it's been over 50 years since I first attended Shishin with Maizumi Roshi, and I remember those days were full of enthusiasm and excitement, and as if we were experiencing the first blush of youth. And we loved to hear stories about the Zen dialogues, and especially ones between Dharma brothers where they would challenge each other to deepen their insight. I particularly remember Seppo and Ganto. And then we would remark to ourselves, boy, if we keep this up, how are we going to be in 20, 30, 40 years? You know, we'll be like Seppo and Ganto. Well, here it is, more than 50 years later, and where are we? What have we learned? Well, that's what we learned, is that Zen practice in an all-male monastery is not the same as Zen practice for lay people, with a large percentage being women. We learned that Japanese values and approaches to practice are not the same as American values and approaches to practice. But we've also learned that the Zen path transcends space and time and cultures and continues forever. So in many fields, and such as science that I'm familiar with, for new ideas to appear, there has to be a paradigm shift that can only take place when the old guard passes on and the new guard takes charges. So the old narrative of the patriarchs and the samurai are not particularly relevant for our Zen practice of today. Maezumi Roshi said that he could not create American Zen. He was Japanese. It's up to his successors to create it. And at one point in her practice, Roshi Shinko had to make a choice between the way of the samurai and the way of the heart. And both of us were trained as samurai. I mean, in the Zen centers where we practiced when we first started, the monitor would come in with a kiyosaku, a stick, and indiscriminately smack everybody on the shoulders, and tell us to sit like a great iron wall, holding your mind against all incoming thoughts. And then they would yell, "Ah!" Yeah, in my practice, I realized I did that for many years. That also, there's another metaphor. It doesn't have to be a great iron wall. It can be an ocean that receives everything. Just let all of the thoughts flow like streams into the ocean and dissolve in the ocean. You don't have to keep them out. But the Zen practice that we received opened our spiritual eyes and hearts so we could experience the wisdom and compassion of the Buddha. But it didn't explicitly deal with intimate relationships, raising children, bringing mindfulness to the workplace. But don't misunderstand. With the right approach to our practice, all these issues can be addressed and dealt with. But since the practice was developed in a monastic environment, these issues of lay people were not handled directly. At the Zen Center in LA, they're eager practitioners. There were couples with children, and there was always a conflict as to how they would divide their time in the Zendo and the family and with the children. So we have to learn how to maintain a steady Zazen practice and extend our practice into our daily life, like Maezumi Roshi wrote, moment by moment. In his volume, Shobogenzo, the True Dharma Eye, Dogen had a fascicle called Ango. The only time I've ever seen this word fascicle used is in reference to chapters in the book of the Shobogenzo. I don't know why they don't call them chapters, but scholars call them fascicles. So it starts out, or part of it goes like this. If we experience the inner essence of the Ango training period, and then all of our actions, taking meals, stretching out our legs, and sleeping, will be forms of training throughout our lives. If we grasp this, we will be diligent and not relax, even for a moment, Such actions is the 90-day training period. This is the key point in the original face of the Buddhas and ancestors. Here we touch their skin, flesh, and marrow. The days and months of 90-day training period carry the enlightened vision and essence of the Buddhas and ancestors. Both the beginning and end of the training period are Buddhas and ancestors. Outside of this, there's nothing, neither large nor small. The training period is not new, not ancient, does not come or go anywhere. Its value is that of fist, and its form is yanking the nose. That's typical Dogen. So what does that mean? I mean, the first part is obvious. He's saying that whatever you do is a 90-day training period. You know, just maintain that focus, whatever you're doing. Don't wobble, as my Dharma sister, Roshi Agyoku, likes to say. Don't wobble. So what is the value of the fist? And they said its form is yanking the nose. So, you know, there's a koan where Joshu went to see a hermit and said, "Are you in? Are you in?" And he just put up his fist like this. So what is that fist? Or Gute's finger, whenever he was asked a question, all he did is he raised one finger. And he said, it didn't matter what they asked him, you know? He just raised one finger. And he said, I was taught this one finger Zen by my teacher Tenryu, and I've used it my whole life, and I've never exhausted it. So that's what the value of the fist or the finger, you know, it's just this. Just drop off everything. It's just this moment, just this fist, just this finger. And this fist covers heaven and earth, and there's not a square inch of ground upon which to stand. And its form is yanking the nose. I don't know, maybe just scratching the nose or picking the nose. What is that? That's what Dogen says. Just be aware, whatever you're doing, whether you're eating or stretching your legs or taking a nap. So he's saying that the 90-day training period includes both the absolute, which is the fist, and the relative, which is yanking the nose. It includes everything. Doesn't exclude anything. Okay. So the problem always is that we have attachments, and whether the attachments are to our ideas, our thoughts, our opinions, our judgments, or even attachment to our self-image, who we think we are. So in order to let go of these attachments, we need to cultivate awareness and courage and compassion. So awareness is much greater than knowledge or thought. With awareness, you can expand the context of your life. And you can look at your attachments or your discomfort or your lack of confidence or your shame or whatever it is that's holding you back. So expand the context of your life so you can witness your own discomfort. And thoughts arise in this larger space created by awareness. And awareness has no quality of good or bad. But if we don't like what we see, we need the courage to trust the rawness of our experience and to accept it for what it is. The essence of courage is being willing to feel the heart, even in situations that are difficult or painful. And compassion means to not attack ourselves for going off course. Otherwise, we won't learn from our behavior. In order to learn from problems, we need to cultivate an acceptance of ourselves. Doesn't mean that we always like what's happening, but we can learn from it. And both courage and compassion are contained within awareness. Courage is a side of awareness that faces life directly. And compassion is a side that makes space for what is there. So Ango is the realization of the Buddha treasure. Of course, when we receive the precepts, the three treasures are the first three of the precepts, and we say Namoji Po Butsu, which means being one with the Buddha. And the Buddha, of course, is the awakened one. So being one with the Buddha treasure, let go of attachments. And then your mind is the mind of the Buddha, and your body's the body of the Buddha. And there's not a beginning of Ango, nor is there an end of Ango. Everything we do, think, and say are the manifestation of the three treasures. And during Ango, we pay particular heed, but don't limit it to the 90 days. So everything boils down to the one body, Buddha, enlightenment, oneness, emptiness. It's this very moment, which is we already appreciated, cannot be limited or defined. So when you have faith in the Buddha, casting away your attachments, there's no mind aside from the Buddha, and no Buddha aside from your mind. There's no beings aside from the Buddha, and there's no Buddha aside from beings. The same for land. There's no land apart from the Buddha, and no Buddha apart from the land. And this is what is meant by having faith in the Buddha. When you really penetrate this, you may attain great awakening, even before you arise from your seat. Last Saturday, Echo recited this verse, which is in the Ango fascicle by Dogen. I'm going to recite it again, and I'm going to appreciate it in a little more detail.
She read it twice.
Okay.
Yeah, that was important to get it.
Yeah, everybody really enjoyed the verse. And it's interesting because I have 2 complete sets of the Shobo Genzo, and I've never read this verse, but then I went back and looked at them, and the verses are there, but it's a very different translation. But I like the translation that's in the Shasta Abbey Shobo Genzo. It goes like this: set your bones upright upon level ground, and to seclude yourself, scoop out a cavern in space. Pass forthwith beyond the gate of dualities, only taking with you a darkness as dark as a black lacquered pail. This Dogen wrote that at the beginning of Ango, his teacher, Tendo Nyojo, recited this verse. So this encapsulates Ango. Set your bones upright upon level ground. That's what we do when we enter the Zendo, right? And to seclude yourself, scoop out a cavern in space. So space is also sometimes a metaphor for emptiness. So sit in emptiness and pass forthwith beyond the gates of duality. In other words, like we're going to chant tomorrow in the Affirming Faith and Heart Mind, the way is not difficult for those who do not pick and choose. Picking and choosing is this over that. So let go of all dualities. And then only taking with you a darkness as dark as a black lacquered pail. I'm gonna talk about what that means in just a minute. But I'm going to read a couple of other translations. You can see that they're not nearly as rich and vibrant as this translation. The most popular translation says, "Now you monks are forming the structure of true practice." See, you're forming the structure of true practice. This one says, "Set your bones on the ground." And then it says, "And making a cave in universal emptiness," instead of scooping out a cavern in space. Then it says, "Complete the 2 things," instead of passing through the gates of duality. And then it says, "And you will have a lacquer bucket." This one says, "Only taking with you a darkness as dark as a black lacquer bucket." So I have actually 4 translations here, and they're all a little different. But I'm going to read another one, which I think Thomas Cleary translated this as. It starts out, it says, "Building a mound on level ground." That mound is your mound of flesh. "Digging a hole in empty space." It's similar. "When we quickly pass the twofold barrier, twofold dual barrier, we take away the black lacquer bucket." Now, some commentators say that building a mound on level ground or digging a hole in empty space are 2 idioms that occur many times in Chinese Chan literature. Chan means Zen in Chinese Zen literature. So and this commentator said they suggest the deluded tendency to create features on an otherwise featureless landscape. The former, by building a mound, is adding features by addition or assertion, and the latter, digging a hole in empty space by subtraction or negation. So it's featureless, but we're always adding something, which is it's amazing. Bodhidharma said that Zen is beyond all words and letters, but there's an awful lot that's been written and said about Zen. And that's the issue here, right? How do you say it? So this term mound, the Japanese word is kotai, which means a bone heap is another translation of it's a bone heap. And while gutserd, the hole, is sometimes taken as a pit or a cage or a trap, but we don't know what Dogen actually meant. So, and of course, the twofold barrier is a common expression for dualism. And when in part of the Jukai ceremony, we say, don't follow misleading or dualistic ways. So that's part of the teaching. And the dualism is stacking and scooping. So take away the lacquer bucket. It says in this translation, we take away. And this commentator said that the black lacquer bucket means to rid oneself of ignorance. It's a metaphor for darkness of ignorance, but that's only one interpretation, because the black lacquer bucket has lots of implications. Seppo, who I mentioned earlier, called himself a black lacquer bucket when he was struggling with his practice. It's because he said light comes in, it's totally absorbed in the black lacquer bucket, and no light goes out. He's receiving all these teachings, but he's not able to manifest them. But let's look at a totally opposite view of black lacquer bucket. It's in Tozan's 5 ranks of Zen. Darkness means the moment of awakening, or a Kensho experience. And here's a verse from the first rank of Tozan, which is the absolute in the midst of the relative. And the verse goes like this: early in the evening before the moon shines, no wonder they meet without knowing each other. And he says there is still the fascination of earlier beauty. So this is where the student experiences a realm of emptiness. So early in the evening before the moon shines, it's dark, right? Dark as a black lacquer bucket. It's dark. And he says, no wonder they meet without knowing each other. You know what that means? That means you meet somebody who you're very intimate with. At that moment, you don't know them, because you've let go of every preconception, every idea, every condition, and you're looking at them maybe for the first time. And that's why he says, no wonder they meet without knowing each other. And the last line then points to the next rank, so we'll stick on with this. So what happens is this verse refers to in deep samadhi with no self-awareness, in other words, no attachment to self. The empty sky vanishes and the iron mountain crumbles. Or that iron wall I was talking about, it crumbles too. So during an awakening Kensho experience, the delusive passions are non-existent. Enlightenment is non-existent. Samsara is non-existent. Nirvana is non-existent. There's not a thought or notion of enlightenment or delusion. There's no thought or notion of age, gender, race, country of origin. I got in trouble once when I was giving an introductory class in Zen, which had both men and women in it, and I was provoking them, and I said, no woman can attain awakening, and so some of you women are kind of, I can sense it even here. And I said, well, no man can either, as long as you're attached to the notion of man and woman, it's not that enlightenment experience. You have to let all of that go. And that's what happens. It's a state of total emptiness. It's like a bottomless, clear pool. And here's where the black lacquer bucket comes in. Because Zen Master Hakuin, who many of you know who he is, he revitalized Rinzai Zen in Japan in the 18th century. And he commented on these 5 ranks. He said, look at this first rank, he said, the great perfect wisdom mirror is perfectly revealed, strange to say, as a black lacquer bowl. He describes the great perfect wisdom mirror that reflects everything as it is. Not as we want it to be, but as it is the same as a black lacquer bowl. He said light does not emerge from a black lacquer bowl, and you can't express it. So I prefer his interpretation, although he lived 600 years after Dogen and his teacher, where they said only taking with you a darkness as dark as a black lacquered pail. But I see that so if you look at this verse again, it says, set your bones upon the level ground. In other words, practice Zazen. And to seclude yourself, scoop out the cavern in space. Empty yourself out, empty out your mind. Dwell in emptiness. Pass forthwith beyond the gate of duality. Let go of all dualities, good and bad, right and wrong, pure and impure, honorable and dishonorable. Only taking with you a darkness as dark as a black lacquered pail. In other words, become the great perfect wisdom mirror that reflects everything as it is. Now, some practitioners regard this state of the black lacquer pail or bowl or bucket as the end-all of Zen practice. And to call this attitude an error is too weak a term. Because if a Zen practitioner remains there, they toil complacently in self-absorption and declare everything to be void. But we chanted this morning in identity, a relative and absolute. To encounter the absolute is not yet enlightenment. That's what this Kensho state is, to encounter the absolute, but that's not yet enlightenment. It's described in the first rank of the 5 ranks. So there's much more we need to integrate and accomplish. So, and Hakuin said, those whose activity does not leave this rank falls into the poisonous seas. He was very graphic. As long as they hide in the place of quietude and passivity, they cannot deal with the chaos of the normal world. When they come into contact with conditions of turmoil and confusion, love and hate, they will find themselves helpless, and all the miseries of existence will press in upon them. As one Buddhist pundit said, if you think you're enlightened, spend a weekend with your family. Of course, my family, we all get along. So let me repeat what Dogen said about Ango. If we experience the inner essence of the training period in all our actions, taking meals, stretching out our legs, and taking a nap, will be forms of training throughout our lives. If we grasp this, we will be diligent and not relax even for a moment. Such action is the Ango training period. So, what if we say all of our actions or reactions, say to criticism, anger, hatred, how do we deal with that? If we can deal with that, they're the forms of training throughout our lives. It always goes back to awareness. It's creating a space. I mean, there is so much division and animosity in our country right now. It's sad. But how do we deal with it? So I want you to scoop out a cavern in space and find your refuge beyond dualities. And only take one thing with you. That's the darkness as black as a black lacquered pail. Thank you.